Hey folks, Aaron here, and I now have part 2 of the tutorial. Let's get started. And thank you for watching part 1. Appreciate that. So let's go over what we're going to cover in this video really quickly here. These modes that I'm pointing to right here are what we're going to cover. We're going to go into depth in them. I'm going to give you demonstrations and samples of each of them. But a big section of this is going to be here in the creative zone, is what Canon likes to call it. We're going to cover these three quite a bit, and I'm not going to touch the manual mode. This is going to be basically my entire focus on the part 3, a long tutorial, and it's going to dive really deep into it. So let's get into sports mode. And basically what sports mode is it's just a mode to capture moving objects with kind of a burst shot, the high-speed continuous shot, as you can see here. And it's very simple. You've got a couple settings here. You can adjust the brightness, or you can change it basically to any one of these drive modes. Typically you want to keep it on high-speed continuous like it was set at. Then here you can make it a little bit darker, a little bit brighter. So let's take some shots here and give you an example of what it looks like. I'm just going to pull this along, or have my son pull it, and take some shots as it goes, and that's how fast it is. Now he's pulling it slower than I asked him, but you get the point. So this is what it looks like, and again, he's not moving it very fast here, but I've used it in very fast motion. It captures it great. It does a great job. And the reason, or the way it's doing it is quite simple. I'll show you right here. What it does is this is well lit, so it's boosting up the ISO way high to get a super fast shutter speed, as you see here, 1/500th of a second, and it's using the AI SERVO focusing system, which focuses super fast. So you're getting a really fast shutter speed and a really fast focusing system. Very simple, very effective. Special scene mode, probably one of the options on the dial that I use the least, but let's go over it anyways. Now what you have here is a bunch of presets that are good in certain situations, and they've listed the situations where they're best suited for. So basically these are the shutter speed, aperture, ISOs. All the settings are basically maximized for these situations. Best way to do this, just get in and experiment. And if you want to have more of a tutorial on screen, I would suggest going in here to the guides and setting up the mode guide and feature guide, and this will kind of walk you through a little bit, even though this is pretty self-explanatory. You pick a mode, you shoot the scene, or shoot it in that mode, and it looks the way that it looks. So I don't know, here's some examples, and if you look at the top left, it'll tell you which mode I'm using. This is on the Canon's free software that I use, and it tells you everything about the photo, the mode it's in, the ISO, the aperture, everything. And again, these aren't, amazing photos or by any means, but it's just an idea of what this does. And I would suggest, if you want to try this, get out and experiment with it in the situations that it requires. I don't know. It's kind of fun, but I don't really use it. Now this one is really cool. Creative filter mode. This is a lot of fun. So let's get started on this. Today we're going to look at some of the filters in movie mode on the Canon Rebel T7i. Okay, for starters, the way we're going to get to the filters is first we're going to come over here and turn the camera up to the movie mode right there. Then we're going to come over here and change this setting to this here, which is the creative filters or filters. So these are the movie options basically, or the filter options you're going to have in movie mode. As you can see here on the screen, let's go over a few of them, and I'm going to actually just show you these in movie mode, show you samples of each of these, and then later on in this tutorial you're going to see how to apply them to photos or take them in photo mode. Basically you can already apply these to photos you've already taken, and I'll show you that in a little bit. But first, I'm just going to put this up and kind of stand there and hopefully not make too much of a fool of myself. We are going to start right here with Dream and work our way down, and I will tell you which one we're doing first. So we're going to start with Dream. Alright, let's do it. This is Dream.
And one thing to note, this only allows you to film at 30 frames per second max. It doesn't have these filters don't have the 60 frames per second. This is old movie. Excuse me, ma'am. Do you have a payphone I may use temporarily? Whatever. Old film. This is memory or old memory. Creates the feel of an old memory. This is dramatic black and white. I have no lines to any movies or any stupid saying here. It's just dramatic black and white. And again, these filters are completely maxed out at the highest levels, and the max frame rate on these is 30 frames per second. Alright, I don't know what this miniature effect is, but it looks pretty dumb, and I'm not going to elaborate on it much more than that. Okay, now this is the HDR mode on there, which is one click up from the dial, the SCN option, one click above. I'll just show you in a picture.
So this was actually something I meant to show in the previous clip in scene mode, and that is when you're shooting in film or shooting video in scene mode, it does open up that last clip there that I just showed, the HDR option. And as you saw, it's, I don't know, you can make your own decision whether you like that or not. So anyways, let's get into this playback options for photos. Now this is a big one here. This is something you will use all the time. Okay, now let's start right here. Instantly you can see here, just like a cell phone with this touchscreen, you can zoom in, focus, move around, and navigate on the screen with your fingers. Or you can use the dial over here. You can go side to side and, you know, go back and forth. Or you can zoom in a little bit with this button here and then use the dial to move around. Or you can go back and use your fingers. You really have a lot of options here to play with to get to whatever you want to see. Now here, if you hit the Q, you're going to unlock a whole lot of options. Starting with right here, protect images, enable, disable. Basically, then you can't delete them. Rotate images. Very simple. Rotate. Save if you want. After you rotate them, do certain things. Over here is rate them. Now this is kind of nice if you are somebody who likes to rate your photos. So here, I'm going to rate it a 3. And now look at the top. Now it shows a 3 up top there, and it just shows that I rate it. Now here are the creative filters I was talking about the photos. You can select different filters and add it to the photo after it's been taken. So you can either shoot it in this mode or you can add it after the fact if you want to see what it looks like. So it kind of eliminates the need to shoot the photo in that mode, but that's a nice option if you want to add filters after the fact. And as you can see what the filters are here and what they do. Now your resizable options here, you can change it to smaller file, bigger file. You can actually put it to 16:9 and things like that. Now cropping, this is a nice one here because it is so easy and so fast. As you can see here, you can set the size you want, you can move it around, get where you want it, hit save, okay, and it's done. You can do it on camera, super fast. Very convenient, very, very convenient actually. Now this one's a nice one too, the AF point display. It shows where the focal points are as you took the picture. So if you're curious, what was I trying to get? What was I trying to focus on? You could look, I use this all the time, you can look and see what you're focusing on. Very good feature. Now this one is kind of tricky. This is the jump with the dial up here. Now you can only use the dial. If you use the other, this thing here, the pad, the set pad, or the, you know, to go left or right, it's going to go from photo to photo or whatever. It's not going to jump as you want. So here, if you go to movies, you know, or go to whatever, it's going to jump movie to movie, and it's kind of tricky. Just beware of that. Now this here is basically an advanced search, so you can search by date, by time, by rating, things of that nature. I have never used this feature, but this is what it is. And then down here is the little phone icon to send it to your connected phone if you have a phone connected. This thing does a great job sending things over Wi-Fi once you finally get it connected and get it up and running. Now here, if you hit the info button up here, it will display, if you hit it one time, you're going to get the ISO, your aperture, your shutter speed, your star rating, you know, the basic settings that were the basic presets or whatever for the image. Okay, it's going to give you down here in the bottom right, it'll give you the image quality, and as you can see here, you can scroll through really quickly to see what settings you had. Now if you hit it again, now you've basically got every setting imaginable that the camera has for that photo. Every single setting, as you can see on screen here. And some of these settings you may or may not know what they are. But hopefully by the end of all these tutorials, if you watch them, I will have explained them well enough. But this is a really nice feature. It really walks you through every little detail of the photo on screen. Even here, this is the 18 to 35 millimeter Sigma lens. It doesn't have the Sigma on there because it just doesn't register that. The metadata doesn't transfer onto the camera for some reason from Sigma to Canon, but it tells me which lens I was using because I know it's the 18 to 35. So as you can see, every little detail, every setting is on there. That's an awesome feature. And that again is hitting the info twice. Now these up here are gonna basically, let's get back. Now here, if you hit the subtract or the minus, whatever the top one, you can see what it does here. It shrinks the images and puts more on screen so you can scroll through more at once. Now once you get down to here, my old eyes can't see these things. I can get a gist of what they are based on the color, but I can't tell what they are. I think, I don't know, this is such a small screen, and with these being that small, but it's neat. It's there. So I prefer to have 4 on screen, or, you know, 1. But there you go. And those are the basic playback options. So now we're going to get into the creative zone, the auto exposure mode, or the P on the dial. So this may be what you're used to looking at here most of the time in full auto mode. So this is going to be quite different. Okay, for starters, let's come over here, put it on the P. And for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to actually change it from the guided mode, which looks like this here, to the standard shooting mode or shooting screen, which will look like this here. Now it's personal preference, but for the sake of this, I'm going to use this. Now this is what you start here with here. Basically your exposure is going to be set to auto. The only thing you can really change is your ISO on this, because your shutter speed and your aperture is going to be continually adjusting to hit the perfect exposure, or the exposure you set at based on this little bar here. Alright, so here's an example. You just line it up, set the ISO whatever you want, take your picture, and it auto exposes. Very nice, very simple. And then here are the spots of focus. Now here, let's change, make it a little bit darker. Now this is where you can make some adjustments on the exposure levels here. So I'm going to go ahead and take a picture here. Now this is what the picture looks like, a little darker. Here's the original, and then again a little darker. Okay, so that's very basic function of this setting. However, it gets much more into detail. As you can see here, every single thing, every aspect of this opens up. Let's start here with the auto light optimizer. Adjust highlights and shadows to improve the image. This is one feature that's really nice. I use it quite a bit. And here's an example of what this does. Basically, it just takes those highlights and shadows and kind of evens them out and sets them the way that the camera thinks it should set. They should be set at. Now again, this is a lot of this stuff is personal preference, so you can toy with it. And that's the beauty of this setting. You can get in here and change all these things to your liking. And there's no perfect way to do this. You can get in and change everything here. You can change your picture style. You can shoot here in black and white. You can do all this, and really opens up the full gamut of options in this camera. Now here's monochrome. This is the black and white option. So here you just set it to that and you can shoot black and white. These three options are my personal user defined options that you need the actual Canon software to use, or you can hit this little info detail button on the bottom here and make some minor adjustments like this. You can make these adjustments on the camera. Now the actual software gets much deeper into these adjustments and you can fine tune it a lot more. And I have a demo on that and a whole video on that if you want to check that out, and how to use the picture style editor and whatnot. But let's keep going here. So let's see what it looks like here with the black and white, or the monochrome. There you go. Very simple. Just set it, boom, take the picture, and you're done. Now, one thing I do want to say here is if you set it to auto, you are essentially now shooting auto everything like you would in full auto, except you have all these options creatively, which is very nice. So here, let's set the exposure back to 0 and take a look right here on the monochrome right here. See that little exclamation point? That's telling you that that is a monochrome setting and it's not a standard color setting. And that'll also be in the viewfinder. You'll see a little tiny exclamation point. So I'm going to change it to one of my personal settings, sharp contrast, and just show you here how easy it is to make these adjustments on the fly. And there you go. This is what it looks like in the style that I set up. Just a nice kind of, different style.
Okay, so for autofocusing, you have three main options here. You have one shot, AI focus, and AI servo. One shot locks onto a subject, holds the lock, and takes the picture. Now, AI focus locks onto the subject when you half push the shutter, just like in one shot. It locks onto the subject, but if the subject moves and it detects it, then it changes accordingly. So it's supposed to be like a hybrid between one shot and AI servo, which continually changes right here, what we're going to talk about next. Now, AI focus is known to be a bit inconsistent. AI servo continually changes. So if you have a moving subject, this is probably what you're going to want to use as an autofocus if you're taking pictures like of a child or something, because it's going to continually follow that child as they're running around as you're taking the picture. So you don't have to sit there and be like, sit still, because this will just follow them around. Now, if you hit this button here and then come down here, you can kind of dictate where you want the general focus to be, but it will alter depending on where the subject moves. So again, there is a style of focusing here for everybody. It just depends on what you're doing.
TV mode or time value mode, shutter priority with auto exposure. The TV on the dial. So I'm going to stay in this mode here. I actually like the guided shooting screen versus the standard screen on this. Now the standard screen looks just like it would on the P, but for the sake of this, I actually like this better. Personal preference. So let's get started. This is going to be the subject. And hey, look, the kit lens is making an appearance. It's actually using it as a prop here. And I'm going to use this little piece of tape here as the subject on the wheel here to see what we can get when that thing is spinning really fast. So the point here is to try to freeze, get an object that's moving really fast, and see how good we can get it frozen. So this is going to really start flying here, and let's see how that looks. Not bad. As you can see here, that was 1/4000th of a second, and we got a pretty good capture there. Now let's drop it to 1/400th of a second and see what kind of motion we get out of this here. Well, about what you'd expect, I guess. I don't know. Not bad. Now let's drop it down to 1/60th of a second and see what we get here. Alright, spinning nicely. So let's try this again as fast as I can possibly get this thing spinning. This thing moves pretty good. And let's see. So obviously this is kind of an extreme sample here. If you're using it to get kids running or an action event or something, this is just giving you an idea of how effective it is against moving objects and what your creative options are. So let's move into the AV, or aperture value, aperture priority with AE, auto exposure. I'm going to use the Sigma f1.8 lens here. So if you're using a kit lens, your options here are only going to be starting at f4. But for the sake of this video, I want to show a huge depth of field and what this can do. So I'm going to start with the f1.8. So let's get a picture at f1.8 and see what it looks like with this depth of field. As you can see here, the background's fairly blurred, almost completely blurred at f1.8. Now the reason I use this a lot is because I like to control my depth of field and what's in focus, and this is a perfect mode for that. So here I want the background to be a little more in focus, as you can see there. And as you gradually bump this up, it gets more and more in focus. So this is a great option for people who are just learning with like the 50mm, or if you get any other like f1.8 or f2 lens or something and you're not used to shooting in that and you want to kind of explore what that can do. So let's go here with the 7 point, and let's see, this should really bring, there you go. Now you can see the background starting to come into focus. And this really makes a big difference when you're starting out with one of these lenses. Now here, let's go to f11. So here you should expect it to be fairly clear throughout the full depth of the image, or at least fairly deep into the image. Now here, just for the heck of it, let's go all the way up, max it out, and there you go. Now to contrast that, let's take it all the way back down to the f1.8. And there you go. Now here's some other options, just some examples. And so if you're getting like up close on a flower, let's say with the 50mm f1.8, and you take a picture of it, you're only going to get a fraction of that flower in focus. So here's where this would really come in handy to get the full image of the flower in focus. And it's beautiful, and it really does make a huge difference. Alright, so that's going to wrap up this tutorial, and again, thank you for watching. Hopefully this gives you a lot of new things to get out there and try and experiment with, and keep an eye out for part 3. I'm going to have that out as soon as I can. And hey, thanks again for watching, and have a fantastic day, and we'll see you soon.